Okay, so we are going to get started with the session today. And as we started last time, we said, okay, First Peter 3:14 to 15 was the verse which I shared last time also, which says, but even if you should suffer for righteousness, you are blessed. Do not fear them or be intimidated, but in your hearts regard Christ the Lord as holy, ready at any time to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do this with gentleness and reverence, keeping a clear conscience, so that when you are accused, those who disparage your good conduct in Christ will be put to shame. So basically, Bible is telling us to be prepared to give an answer or a defense for our faith. So now, last time I said we will start with worldviews, logic, and fallacies. Then we'll go into the creator. So this should, cover the majority of the questions which was presented. So what we are seeing here is we already looked at worldviews in the last session. So today we are going to talk about logic and fallacies. So this is actually a foundation for a lot of things we will do. So let me start by simply making a statement here before going into logic and fallacies, so that we get an idea of what we are talking about here, right? So I'm going to make this statement that let's say I say Ritik came from India and he is studying computer science. And then I'm going to say everybody who came from India is going to study computer science. So now that's that may sound as crazy, but just wanted to say that a lot of times when it comes to arguments about faith or debates about faith, we have to be very much aware of what are those fallacy and what are those statements which doesn't make sense. So this short session, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of how this works. So let's start with logic and fallacies. Why do we need to even be aware of it? So in the context of apologetics, so if you're thinking what is apologetics, it is a study where we give defense to our faith. So these two things, logic and fallacies, are tools and concepts used to reason effectively and persuasively while defending or examining or explaining a particular belief system, usually religious or philosophy. So if you don't apply correct logic and if you don't identify fallacies, anybody can deceive, people, right? So we'll get into some specific examples, but so these are tools which are used for really understanding our faith. So number one, what is logic? So what is logic? So logic is a study of reasoning and argumentation. It provides the framework for constructing valid arguments and evaluating the truth or soundness of the claims. So we have been like we always tell to people, right? Be logical. If somebody is saying something foolish, we say be logical, right? And we know it doesn't apply the logic. We make all these statements because it doesn't make sense. So same way, when it comes to these matters of discussing faith and related things, we need to apply good logic. So now, good reasoning, right? And it should be good argumentation. So what does it mean? We have to clarify the ideas, ensuring that beliefs and arguments are well defined and precise. It cannot be confusing, and it should demonstrate coherence, that the showing that the belief system is internally consistent. What does it mean? Let me give you one example. Since our context is from the Christian biblical standpoint, if somebody says Jesus tells us not to lie, and then the other on the other side it says Bible records people who lied, then we come to a conclusion, oh, it is okay to lie even if Jesus said not to lie, right? So there is an inconsistency in that statement, right? So first thing is Jesus said do not lie. Then somebody is saying Bible tells people lied. And then the third thing is even though Jesus said do not lie, we can still lie. So there is inconsistency. So what I'm trying to say is when we apply logic, we need to ensure that there is a clear consistency in what it is being said. The next thing is persuade effectively. So convincing others through rational and compelling arguments. That's also very important in the logic system. So we have to make sure that our arguments are, when I use the word arguments, in the context of apologetics, don't take it in a very negative way. It is not like a heated argument, but very logical arguments. Presenting logical arguments for the points you are trying to say. Now, this may sound a little tough, but I want to tell you that once you get an idea, you can easily identify a lot of problems, right? So let's move forward. So I hope you got a little bit of an idea about what is logic. It's nothing. It's not any rocket science. It's what we know, but putting it a little bit more in a defined way. So, what are the key components of logic in apologetics? Number one, the premises, the statement or a claim that serve as the foundation of an argument. So, for example, somebody says Earth is round, right? So, number two, validity. An argument is valid if its conclusion logically follows from its premises, right? So, there used to be an argument about flat Earth, like Earth is flat or Earth is sphere, or so things like that. So that statement, validity, and the soundness. An argument is sound if it is valid and all its premises are true. And the conclusion is a statement that logically follows from that premises. So what does it mean? Number one, the statement or claim that has to be stated very clearly. Number two, we have to make sure that the argument is valid and it's logically coming to a good conclusion based on the premises. Soundness should be there. An argument is sound if it is valid and all its premises are true. And the conclusion is the statement that logically follows from the premises. So we'll get into it. If you're getting a little confused here, don't worry. We'll clarify a little bit. Very soon you'll understand. So we live in a postmodern generation where they say there is no absolute truth. What is good for you is good for me, and what good for you and what is good for me should be good for me. I don't care what you think. You should not care what I think. That is a postmodern classical arguments. Now the question now comes up is, okay, if we live in a society like that where there is a lot of pluralism, sometimes rational discussions and thoughts becomes a little difficult. So that is where we need to be very careful that we learn to identify faulty statements. Somebody like a Jehovah Witness, let's say you are meeting a Jehovah Witness, the first thing they will say is, Bible says that there is only one God. And you will say, yes, there is only one God. But they will say, like, Jesus is not God. You will say, why it is not God? They will open up their Bible and show John, and they will see that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. So basically, they will try to save something from their own Bible. Now, you have to validate that. You have to make sure that all those things are, their arguments are valid. And it is logically, so I just gave an example of that, right? There are many other people who will try to confuse, but they are not sound in their arguments or what they are presenting. So that actually brings us to this example of a logical reasoning, which I was trying to say earlier. So the premise one is everything that begins to exist has a cause. So number two, the universe began to exist. So conclusion, therefore, the universe has a cause. So this is actually a simplified version of something called as a Kalam cosmological argument, a common argument in Christian apologetics. So the universe began to exist. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. So therefore, the universe has a cause. It came from, it's not like it came from nothing. So basically, you can see that there is a logical argument which comes here. Everything that begins to exist as a cause and the universe begin to exist. and therefore the universe has a cause. So now that is where where I want to now you to focus, because this is the key area which I like, the subject of fallacies. So fallacies in apologetics um, are errors or flaws in reasoning that undermine the validity or soundness of an argument. So in apologetics, identifying and avoiding fallacies is crucial for maintaining credibility and engaging in meaningful dialogue. We are going to get into some examples of fallacies. And this is why I'm interested in, very interesting is, over the years I have learned something that, whenever people come and talk to you, they come with a lot of fallacies. And sometimes if you're not careful, you will also end up in a very invalid, conclusion. So let's look at some of those things. So some common fallacies. First one is called a strawman fallacy. So strawman fallacy is misrepresenting or oversimplifying an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. Right. So some of these examples in this are more neutral. So try, because I want to make sure that we understand it. So an example is atheists think that the universe came from nothing, which is absurd. This misinterprets atheistic or scientific perspectives. So basically, you are dismissing an atheist by saying that, oh, they just think that everything came from nothing. But even people who don't believe atheists, they have more valid arguments than just simply that, because one of their key argument is definitely it's all scientific, right? Evolution, and they would say, God has no role in it. But you can easily dismiss it by saying that, oh, they believe everything came from nothing. So that is a misrepresentation of what somebody is actually saying, or you will oversimplify it to make it easier for you to attack somebody else. So this happens when debates happen, right? Somebody will misinterpret or say something in a wrong way than what was intended. So that's a strawman fallacy. Then there is something called as ad hominem. So this is where you attack the person instead of addressing the argument. So because for example, somebody is making an argument and you bring in something else. You say, oh, you cannot be trusted because you lied in the past. Or, we know that, people like you are always liars. Something like that, basically moving away from the issue and personally focusing on a person. So there is an example, you can't trust their argument because they are not a Christian. That's not true. Non-Christians may have a good argument, right? So we have to avoid those things, because as we will see in the more examples, if we are actually going to talk to somebody who is a thinker or who is logical, you can't just have these kind of fallacies, right? So you can't actually move from the central issue to attacking the personality. So if you have seen some TV debates, which happens often in many places. So you see that when they start with the topic, and then all of a sudden what happens is when the topic is not going anywhere, or if one person is feeling that he's losing his ground, he will slowly introduce something and start personally attacking the other person. That way the issue is completely now diverted, right? So things like that. That's this type of a fallacy. The third is circular reasoning. I actually like this a lot, because um, you know, uh, one example is, you are basically assuming the conclusion within the premises, so you're not going out. So this is a classic statement: the Bible is true because it's God's word, and we know it's God's word because the Bible says so. So the circular reference. So where is the reference? It's all within the same thing. So Bible says so, it is true, so we believe that Bible is true, right? So that there are many things where you will be basically, people will be going circular reasoning to prove their point, which is not logically correct. So we have to make sure that when we are making an argument with someone who is trained in this or who knows this, we are not making circular arguments. So for example, if somebody has somebody who doesn't know, you can tell them Jesus rose again from the dead, and he died and all those things. They will get it. But if somebody has done some good research on all those things, and so that in that case, you just can't tell them, oh, I because Bible says so. Yes, you can tell them, but there needs to be more than that. So you may have to go into the historical evidences of the existence of Jesus from a historical standpoint, and you may have to bring in, more things to this. So try to avoid circular reasoning and don't use it for no reason, because for somebody who is serious about what they are trying to figure out, they will easily dismiss it, saying it doesn't matter, right? So because your argument is basically within the same premises that you are saying, so your conclusion is coming from that. The next is the false dichotomy or a fallacy. So what is it? When there are multiple options available, you're just presenting two options. So it says either you believe in God or you have no moral foundation, right? But so this is where you basically reduce the options and bring it into a box from where you can't actually go out, right? So that is where this becomes a challenge. So this is what is called as false dichotomy, and then this is a classical one where you appeal to the emotions. So what does it really mean? Manipulating emotions instead of presenting logical reasons. Because you should believe in God because the idea of eternal punishment is terrifying. Okay, this is not wrong in itself, but when it comes to the logical side of things, there is a better argument to be made. So a lot of times, when a statement like this is made, what is happening is you are trying to terrify the person. You're trying to emotionally appeal to that person, and then sometimes, when I don't know whether you have encountered where logically people cannot present something or say or present any argument, what they will do is they will end up actually, uh, you know, making statements which is more like emotional appeals, or they will try to cry. They will try to say, "Oh, I worked so hard and you can't accept it," or things like that. So basically, it's an appeal to emotion where the goal is to manipulate emotionally, and once that comes, the logic stops. So that's another one. Then there is a red herring. So what does it mean? Introducing irrelevant information to distract from the main argument. So now we are talking about logic and fallacies, and all of a sudden, let's say I'm going to bring in something from, let's say, Middle East or some Europe, which has nothing to do with this whole topic we are talking about here. So all of a sudden, I'm going to say now, like, let's say we are talking about fallacies and logic here, but then I'm going to say that, have you gone to, Mount Rushmore? And then I'm distracting, and it has nothing to do with the topic. So like one example is, instead of debating evolution, let's talk about how scientists have been wrong in the past, right? So sometimes this is very, very dangerous, because sometimes it's possible that people will bring these type of a thing and try to derail you. So that is a reason. That is one of the reason why you need to be focused on the primary premise on which people are actually talking, and don't let the conversation go all over. Because if you let the conversation go all over, you will not come to any conclusion, and you could be spending hours and hours debating and talking, and you will not reach anywhere. So that's that one. And then the one more thing is appeal to ignorance. Claiming something is true because it hasn't been proved false, right? No one has proven God does not exist, so God must exist. That sounds correct, right? And from a Christian faith background, this may not be a problem, but for a non-believer or somebody who doesn't know Jesus, for them, okay, if nobody has proven that God doesn't exist, how can you say that God must exist, right? So uh, this is where these examples are very much neutral. So don't go by this example alone. But I wanted to like really present. There are lot more examples, right? So, for example, let's make another argument. Um, you know, okay, um, if you say something where you don't you it. So let me say this way: there may be or there may not be. You are not sure, right? So it may be true or it may be false, but you are just assuming that your point is the correct one, right? So, for example, uh, will it snow tomorrow or will it not snow tomorrow? Okay, of course, weather channels can predict it, but you know, if you want to prove that it's going to snow, you can make an argument, for that one. Uh, but by saying that tomorrow has not come yet, it's going to snow tomorrow because tomorrow is has not come yet. Or you can say it's not going to snow tomorrow because we have not seen tomorrow yet. Tomorrow is still going to come. I know that this sounds silly, but in real arguments, a lot of times people make such arguments or fallacies when they talk about things. So this is one of my other circular reference, and this is hasty generalization is something I actually I've encountered it many times. So basically, drawing a conclusion based on insufficient evidence, right? This is where I many times in my conversations I have to tell people, hey, you're making a hasty generalization because okay, I met one rude atheist, so all atheists must be rude, right? I started this session by talking about a hasty generalization statement only. I said Ritik came from India, he studies computer science, so everybody who comes from India should be studying computer science, right? So that sounds obviously problematic, but a lot of times people will make arguments like that, right? For example, you may say, I drove this car and it was very smooth. So every car I drive is going to be smooth, right? Every car I drive is going to be smooth. Or you can say every car from that manufacturer is smooth. So basically, without enough evidence, you are making some conclusions based on a very small sample set. So that's the hasty generalization. So now, the question now comes is why logic and fallacies matter in this study? Because in the coming sessions, we are going to get to the more topics like, who is God and things like that. So now, if you know these, it strengthens your arguments. Logical reasoning ensures that your claims are coherent and compelling. It builds credibility. Avoiding fallacies demonstrates intellectual honesty and respect for your audience. And it also engages effectively. Clear and rational arguments foster productive discussions and mutual understanding. And sometimes, as you know, right, emotional appeal is there. People may shout, they may want to just get, they may want to just derail the discussion. But we are not talking about those things. We are talking about the serious ones. So by mastering logic and recognizing fallacies, you can present your case with clarity, precision, and respect, contributing to meaningful and thoughtful dialogue about faith, truth, and meaning. So that is why this subject is important and this topic matters. Um, so that concludes my uh, presentation. So now I'm going to come and ask you, anybody has any quick question about what we have just looked or shared. If you have a question, you can ask. Otherwise, we can conclude. As last time, a blog post has been posted, recording will be posted. I will share that with you. But if you have any question, I'm open for responding to that. I know I went very fast, but we have very limited time. So
Hello, sir. Hi, it's me, Ganesh.
yes.
So, in my life, there are two kind of people. One kind is like, when we talk about God or when we talk about Jesus, they say some naive things. Okay. Like